Today we talk about dice pools. Hey Frank, have you just ever wanted to jump into a pool of D20s?
Like Scrooge McDuck?
Seems like it might be nice.
No.
And why not?
They've done the scientific research on that, and he would die. Granted, it's not going to be metal because it's not gold, but I'm pretty confident that he's still dead.
I mean, I guess they could be metal dice.
Welcome to What is Tabletop, where Charles has the very interesting goals and desires that he wants to fulfill. This is a genuine thing you want to do, by the way, right?
Yeah, actually, I'm not. This is 100% truthful. I think it'd be cool.
This isn't a bit. This was
This
Charles
is not really a
asking for
bit.
the
I was
question.
I remember watching DuckTales as a child, and I was like, you know what? That'd be kind of cool to jump into a pool of something. And I'm like, why not dice?
No, that's never been my appeal. I would like to jump into water, as the Lord intended. Anyway, we're talking about dice pools today.
If you couldn't tell.
Yeah, good old pools full of dice, but really not that way, but yes, that way. And of course, like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoy our stuff, because it helps other people to find our stuff and enjoy it.
Yeah, and join our Discord. We have lots of places where you can talk to us and tell us different things.
And you tell us we're wrong. Oh my gosh. I'm kidding. I keep saying that that's what happens in our Discord. Really, ironically, our Discord really likes us. I mean, I assume that would be the case if you're going to be going to a Discord where we're in charge of it.
Could you imagine being in a Discord where everyone just hated you? Yeah.
Anyway, let's talk about the dice pools, Charles.
First, we always got to talk about the big boy in the room, the Dungeons and the Dragons.
Well, before we do that, let's describe what dice pools are, and then we will use D&D as a...
I get ahead of myself.
It's
Sorry.
okay. So looking for a new co-host, you can message what is tape. No, I'm kidding.
You're going to get so many messages now.
And they will all be deleted.
Before Charles sees them.
So this is kind of a sequel video to our dice resolution video, where we talked about different kinds of methods of resolving dice, and one of them is dice pools. And then looking into it further, there are a lot of different ways you can use dice pools, and we might do the same thing for these other forms of dice resolution, and being like, here's all the different ways you can roll with one die and stuff like that, because games are always going to find the most interesting way to use a mechanic. And so we wanted to talk about dice pools because there is a lot of interesting ways to do it. And so first off, we usually talk about 5th edition.
Yes.
5th edition doesn't technically have this.
Technically, it does not, as far as I can tell. Frank was mentioning before we started recording that, well, we're going to talk about D&D first. I'm like, does D&D have dice pools?
So technically, yes, because there is hit points, right? And in your hit points in 5th edition, when you take a short rest, you can roll your hit dice, which are in a pool. It's literally described that way.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, it is a pool of dice that you could use, and you could use multiple of it. In actuality, it's just you roll one die, heal that much, then you can keep rolling more dice to heal that much, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I understand the idea, because yes, you could technically roll it as a pool of dice.
Now, and then you could make the argument as well that some spells or attacks, like sneak attack, fireball, are rolling a pool of dice. And that is true. However, you're not trying to hit a target number. You're not trying to get a certain amount of successes or anything like that. You're just rolling a bunch of dice to get a lot of fun stuff out of it.
Basically, you're just doing stuff to cause damage and or mitigate damage, is the word we call it. So,
yeah. So we're not talking about any of that when we talk about dice pools. We're talking about you have a bunch of dice, and whether you as a player determine how much dice you roll, whether it's the GM, whether it's looking for a certain amount of successes or just one, stuff like that, that's what we're going to be talking about, is the many different ways that can work in your game, and maybe some fun ways that you can utilize that.
Let's talk about the static dice pools. So what is that?
So static dice pools is pretty simple. Okay. It means it's not going to change too much. And I wanted to talk about this because, again, some people will argue this is not a dice pool because it doesn't fluctuate the amount of dice you roll. And so some people will argue that that is necessary for it to be a dice pool system. But I wanted to give the static its own thing just so we can make it obvious. Basically, static dice pools means whenever you roll something, you're always rolling the same amount of dice. Right. And that is going to be Fate Core. Fate Core is kind of that. You roll 4 dice, and you're always rolling 4 dice. And again, that is technically a dice curve, but I wanted to bring it up. That is a possibility that you could be doing that. We're going to quickly move on to the other version, right? Which is the idea that most people are going to think about, and we have Blades in the Dark as the example for that, which is
1 success.
Yeah, so basically the idea is you're going to take a stat and maybe also another thing. Sometimes you take more than one thing, sometimes you don't, but you're going to take certain things and you're going to say, this is how many dice I'm going to roll. Occasionally, you could spend resources to increase the amount of dice that you're going to roll. So, for example, in Blades in the Dark, you have a certain amount of points per skill, stat, whatever the technical term is for it. And you're always going to roll that many dice. You can then spend stress to add an additional dice to it, right? And so what you're going to do is you're going to take however many dice you end up having, and you're going to roll them, and you're going to look at the highest result, usually, not always, but usually you're going to look for the highest result, and you're going to take that and just hope it succeeds. So in, again, Blades in the Dark, there is a locked-in target number. You're always rolling D6s, right? And it's always D6s in dice pool systems. I would love to see a dice pool system that doesn't use D6s, by the way.
Oh, hey, maybe there's a system out there. You guys can let us know that in the comments if there's a system out there that uses
I'm sure
other...
the math is important.
Yeah.
Like D6s are easier to do math, and they're more common as well.
Yeah. I was imagine the availability, accessibility of it is probably a big factor.
So you're going to take a bunch of D6s, and if it's a 3 or lower, you miss. Your thing doesn't happen. Sucks to be you. A 4 or 5, your thing kind of happens, but there's like a consequence, or sometimes it's like, okay, you get what you want, but at a cost. Or maybe it's like you don't fully get what you need and you need to make another roll. There's a lot of different ways it could go about, but 4 to 5 is a mixed success. 6 is critical success, or like you get everything that you wanted as a player. If you roll multiple 6s on any dice, you will then get a critical success where you get what you wanted and more.
So does it just have to be one extra 6? There's no like, oh, you have 4 6s amazingly how that happened. Is that like a super major critical?
Well, some systems will do that, but again, we're not talking about that. We're talking about the systems that only look for one die result.
Got it.
Yeah, and so that is how it kind of works in Blades in the Dark. Candela stole that. They added one extra mechanic of the gilded die where depending on what skill you roll, you might get to add a gilded die. And when you do that, you gain a resource back if you choose that result. Yeah. It's an interesting idea that I wish they could have expanded on further.
And I agree with that, actually. Again, I know we talk a lot of beef about Candela. Check out the video below. I feel like the gilded die could have done a lot more. Even rolling the gilded die, it felt like a failure. Like on that was just as bad as rolling a failure on any other die.
Yeah, it could have been more interesting of like a bargain extent. Because what it does is in specifically Candela, is it's a system where you want to be more spread out. Right. Like Blades in the Dark, you want to be good at everything, because if you have no points in a skill, you're rolling 2d6 and taking the lower, which is bad. Right. We're already talking about like you need one success. Like it's just one die that determines it, and the fact that you're making it harder on yourself to succeed is bad. So in Candela, when you add the gilded die, it's not like it increases the odds of success.
Correct.
It just means that if you choose it, you get a resource. But the resource isn't as interesting to use, really, and you're going to get those resources back in various other ways as well. It would have been more interesting if it was like the gilded die gives you a higher chance of success. Right. So like, okay, now you're more likely to use that skill. But in a game system where you want it to be spread out with how good you are at everything, but then the gilded die makes you specialize, it kind of doesn't work too well.
My immediate thought is like, maybe it still makes it swingier, but maybe a bigger die than just a D6.
No, that would be weird, because like then the statistics on that like
I know
increase drastically.
And I get that it alters the things a little bit. It just like my initial thought is like, if you're gonna roll and take this chance, you're gonna want a higher chance of success.
I think the bigger thing would actually be get rid of the whole, if you have 0 points in something, you roll 2 and take the lower. That's actually how I think you would do it. Is if you all start basically always rolling one die, and then each point is an additional die you roll. That makes at least the gilded die a little bit better, because you're not getting penalized for not being good at something. Right. I think that would be the way to do it. But also, like, there is something interesting about the negative. I mean, again, if someone can make a version of that works, love to see it. But as far as I'm aware, Blades in the Dark does it the right way, where it's like you're spending your health to increase the dice that you roll, and you're always trying to roll, specific. You're always rolling like 2 to 3 dice at most, versus Candela, where it's a little bit more complicated with like trying to specialize but not trying to specialize.
So let's move on to the next one. Let's talk about multiple successes.
So this is the same thing, most popularized by the World of Darkness games with Vampire. It's the same thing. You're going to take however you determine your dice pools. In Vampire, it's specifically taking a stat and taking a skill. You just put them together. So like if I have 4 in one stat and 3 in another, I'm now rolling 7 dice. And then you're going to roll 7 dice, and you want to get any number of successes equal to what the GM told you needed. So if it's difficult, the GM's going to say like, okay, you're going to need 4 successes. It's like, ooh, I need 4 of the dice to get a 6 or higher, basically. And then a 10 is a crit if matched with another 10. but not matched with. This is where it gets complicated, specifically in vampire. But traditionally, it's 6 or higher on d10s are your successes, and you're counting how many times that's happened, and you're comparing that to the target number. Some games get additional things if you get more successes past that. Oh, you played Hunter the Reckoning, which is a Vampire the Masquerade game, basically.
Yes.
Yeah, and so like it's interesting because if you roll a 1, there's a narrative consequence, right? And it's basically this idea of like whatever flaw you have takes over. So in Vampire and Werewolf, it's literally the monster inside you takes over. And so like if you rolled a bestial failure, I think is what it's called in Vampire, you succeed, but it shows off your vampirism. So let's say you're trying to lockpick something, and you're like, all right, I'm trying to lockpick it, and then you get a bestial failure. It's like you can't break the lock, so you just punch it through, and it comes off the hinges, like very supernaturally.
Yeah, so something that's kind of out of the ordinary happens where it's like, that guy ain't quite right.
Right. And then in Hunter the Reckoning, it's literally like you give into your flaw too much.
Yes.
Where it's like your obsession for fighting the monsters takes over, and now you get reckless in that regard. And so that's a cool, interesting way to do it. Then obviously there's the critical successes, which I think a 10 on its own is not always a critical success. You need to pair it with another critical success. So I think people will tell me I'm wrong in the comments. It's fine. But like it only counts as 3 successes if 2 10s are together, kind of a thing. Now, I don't think the Vampire does that, but don't quote me on that. I think they do, but I don't remember. There's so many games that we review that they all blend together a little bit.
So I really actually like the idea of having multiple successes. It feels like you're more likely to accomplish something than if here's that target number, you got to hit it. Even with like Blades in the Dark, which I haven't played, but again, I know a little bit about from researching and watching videos on it, it feels more likely you're going to get a success when you have a dice pool and you have an opportunity for multiple successes. Whereas sometimes we just have like a target number. It's, like 6 is a definite success. Even when you're rolling multiple dice, it seems like you have a higher chance, but it just seems much more challenging to do it that way.
Yeah, it is interesting how rolling multiple dice makes you think you're more likely to succeed, even though the math would say like you're succeeding about the same amount of time as rolling a bunch and trying to go for 1d6.
It's all statistics, so it's just like the math side of it. I understand. I'm like it feels like I have extra dice in my hand, so I'm going to have more. I have more chances to excel, but I also have more chances to fail. But you don't think that way.
Well, yeah, because you're not changing the number you need in order to succeed. You're just changing the amount of chances you have in order to succeed. These kind of games, the amount of successes you need, like 4 doesn't seem like a lot, but it really is. 4 out of 7 dice, that's more than half the dice needing to get basically more than 50% chance of succeeding.
That's also kind of how Fallout does it as well.
Yeah, so like that's kind of what we were talking about, what I was referring to when I said some games have the success amount, but then if you get more successes, you get a benefit. So in Fallout, you're rolling 2d20 always, and you can spend resources to roll more. So like I'm always rolling 2d20. I have a specific target number that's based off of like how I made my character that I'm trying to roll under trying to roll over. And so as long as I do that, I succeed. But you might need multiple successes, right? It might be 2 or 3 successes, in which case, well, now I might want to increase how many dice I'm rolling. And they also have the whole tag system where like certain skills, if you get a crit on a 1, 2, or 3, which counts as 2 successes, stuff like that. Well, again, what we want to talk about is the fact that if you get more than the successes that are needed. So if I needed 2 and I actually got 3 successes, that extra 1 gets banked into the resources that the entire party can then use to roll more dice in the future. So it actually encourages you to try not to just succeed, but to succeed exorbitantly, which I think is very interesting.
Which, I think that's a fun way to do it too. And also the fact that it can benefit everyone else as well. It's not just, giving that mechanic back to the players, giving it back to the player group. So.
Yeah, it's interesting because it makes you have to spend resources on rolls you're likely to have succeeded on. Yeah. Because you're like, well, we only have 1 die that I can add to this roll, but by doing that, I increase the chances of us adding more dice in the future. It's a very interesting like risk reward kind of element that's involved with that.
Yeah, and there are other ways to get your dice pool bigger as well, but that's the main one.
That's the main way,
because you're going to be rolling so much.
Well, and again, like the system isn't a 1-to-1. So if I'm always rolling 2d20, and if I want to roll a third, I spend 1 point from the resources. But then if I want to add in a second one, I have to spend 3 points, and you can only get a max of like 6 points in that that pool. So you got to be very wise about how you're spending it, because otherwise you could just be like, well, I need to make sure I succeed on this thing, so I'm going to roll 5 dice. Oh, we used all of our resources and I failed still.
Yeah. Well, the cool thing is too is that when we were doing that, when I was running that game, you were very communicative about using those dice.
Yeah.
Whereas, I'm sure other groups is a little different, but it wasn't like, it never felt like you were hogging it. It felt like you were, hey, I have an idea. Let's do this. You weren't wasting it. You were spending it.
Now, the next thing we're going to talk about is a system that I created and is available on our Patreon. So go visit our Patreon. What is tabletop.com on Patreon? Yes, that's it. It's definitely not it. There will be a link in the description that you can go check it out. It's available for all free members, but if you spend some money, you might get some cool additional stuff. And of course, we'll have future products available only to people who are actually backing us financially on the Patreon. So support us over there, and you can get some cool stuff already, including a video that will be out at the same time that this video is out. So yeah, it's called We're Friends, We Promise. Right, Charles? So anyway, we're going to talk about Target Acquired, a video that we made that only like 400 of you saw, which is okay. We get it. It's a new thing. We were trying it out. But the idea in Target Acquired is you are all assassins, and you are spending one phase to set up your assassination attempt.
Right.
And so you can go around and you're like, well, we're going to get this disguise and we're going to get this information and we're going to plant this weapon and do all these things. And every time you're successful in doing that, you add a D6 to a dice pool that's ever growing. And so you are choosing ultimately how big that dice pool gets before you now attempt the assassination. Once you attempt the assassination, you're now choosing from the dice pool that is available how many of those dice you're going to use. And every time you use dice, whether you're successful or not, they disappear. Because, of course, much like if you were to actually do this assassination, your resources would be spent.
Yeah, I was going to say your dice pool very much acts as a resource as well, which
Right.
I like that concept.
Yeah, and usually what will happen is you'll know what the target number is ahead of time. Like rules state, you have to know what the target number is and how difficult it is to assassinate a target. So if it's like a 10, you're like, well, I'm going to need at least 2 dice. Probably want to get 3 just to make sure. Maybe 4 if we're not sure. But then, you roll all those dice. Hopefully you've assassinated the target. Hopefully you've succeeded on your mission. But whatever's left over is what you have to use to get out of there.
Yeah. Well, that was the great thing, too. I remember sitting in on your game session with a couple of our friends, and they did not meet the criteria of the assassination, and then there was a consequence for it. So I thought it was pretty... Again, I think the concept that you developed around this was really neat. Especially the idea of disappearing dice, like you don't get to keep these. These are, once they're spent, they're gone. You don't get to renew this. That doesn't come back. It is gone.
And so this is always a dice pool system because once you've gotten into the assassination phase, you can roll multiple dice to make sure you succeed on something. Going into the phase, you're only ever rolling 1d6, and you're just like, a 6 is a guaranteed success, and I add it to the dice pool. There are ways that you can increase and decrease the number. That's in the quick start rules. Go check it out. We'll eventually have a longer form version, but again, that's going to be available specifically behind our Patreon supporters.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you can check it out there. But I just thought it was a cool idea of you grow the dice pool and then you choose how much of it you get to use over time. I thought that was a really cool thing.
So when you're planning this assassination, how much planning is allowed to go into? Like, how many dice are you allowed to add into it?
Yeah. There are rules in the game that tell you you have so many days in order to complete the mission and how many attempts at adding dice to the pool you get per day. Because otherwise, you could just do it an unlimited amount of times and then you would eventually have an unlimited amount of dice, right? Yeah. Because the people who are going to metagame it and be like, well, I can, if I have unlimited prep time like Batman, then I have unlimited dice, therefore I can roll unlimitedly, therefore... And it becomes a whole thing. No, there are specific rules. Check it out. Go to our Patreon.
Please
really
do.
Cool. Yep.
All right. So let's move on. Let's talk about matching dice.
Yeah. So this comes from a game series. It's not just one game called Outgunned. Okay. Charles is pretending to be shocked.
Sorry. Continue.
It's called the Outgunned series. The first one is an action movie type thing. Then they do adventure movies like Indiana Jones. And then the most recent one on Kickstarter was superheroes. We did not back it because our friends in Dominant had their game, and we do not support other groups unless they're our friends. I'm kidding. That was a joke. Yeah, so basically the idea is you're rolling dice, and you're just trying to find matches. So what the dice are doesn't matter. They give you special dice, and they all have different iconography on it. It doesn't matter. You're rolling dice, and you're like, oh, here's 2 1s. I got a match. Here's another match. 2 2s. I got that. And you're just trying to see how many matches you get, and then that determines how successful you are. So 1 match, you're successful. Great. Awesome.
Okay.
2 successes, oh, now you're additionally successful, right? It's very similar to Fallout in the sense of like the more successes you get, the more awesome something can happen.
That's awesome.
So like if all 6 of the dice are matching, then it's like you just control the narrative and determine what happens because the likelihood of that being rolled is super rare and it's really cool.
Yeah. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. The Assassin's Creed, does it do something similar?
So Assassin's Creed is always 4 dice, but it is a matching system as well.
Okay.
Of like you have to get a certain amount of successes on a specific die face in order to succeed, but then you can have stats and abilities that can change one side to another side or do stuff like that. That's where like the differences can come in, is where it's like a 1 can count as a 1 or a 2.
Oh, I see.
Right? So where it's like now I had a chance of rolling a match. Oh, now it's a little bit more increased because 1s are a little bit more wild.
So in the Outgunned series, is it more? Does it matter what the match is? Is it a specific number you have to match?
No. It does not. The specific number does not matter. It's the amount that you matched. That's all that matters.
I like that. That's cool. That's different.
Yeah, and so obviously, like mechanics that you can start thinking of with this is like, and this is true of everyone, is re-rolling and stuff like that. But obviously, since you're literally playing Yahtzee, you're gonna want to re-roll certain dice a little bit more because you're like, well, I was 1 off. Let me just re-roll that and spend a resource and stuff like that. So there's some interesting ways to look into that. I haven't looked into the system enough to know like exactly what like each perk or ability does to know the kinds of things, but I will be looking into it just on my own.
And I think the last one we have is using a dice pool to do a certain amount of actions.
Yeah. So this comes from like Panic at the Dojo. Other games kind of do this, but I want to talk about Panic because it's interesting. Mm-hmm. So basically in Panic, you're always determining a stance, like a special move that you have. It's a stance and like a power or something like that. And you put them together and you get this really cool fighting technique. And basically what that does is it gives you a certain amount of dice. They vary in size. Okay. So that's what's interesting about this is it's a dice pool that you create, but it varies in size.
That's interesting.
So it could be D4s, D6s, D8s, D10s. And so you're going to roll them, and then whatever numbers you get, they don't like determine specific outcomes, but rather you get to choose like, okay, I rolled a 2. I'm going to use that for my movement because I only need to move twice, right? So boom, I moved twice. Now I'm going to deal 4 damage, and that's going to do this. Now I'm going to use this die for my special ability because I needed a 6 or higher in order to use it for my special ability. And that's the idea with Panic at the Dojo, where it's, just rolling things, and that determines how many actions you get per se. But you're always going to have the same amount of dice, so technically you always have that many actions. Mm-hmm. It's just more of like, how often do you do that specific thing? And again, what's nice is because you can use dice for everything, even if you roll like some numbers that are low, you're more likely to roll some numbers that are high as well. So it's like, I really wanted to punch this guy really hard, so I'm going to save that die for later. And now it's more about like, okay, how can I use what I have to get the result I wanted?
So it's about conserving your dice for when something, like especially like your higher dice, for when something complicated or more complex shows up.
Yeah, it's basically the idea of like, everyone has a plan to get punched in the face, the Mike Tyson quote, where you're like, I know what I want to do on my turn, but will the dice allow me to do the thing I want to do on my turn? And if not, how can I then use what the dice gave me to try something else?
Oh, that's fascinating. Definitely a game we should definitely try. I would love to try that game out.
I think a lot of people might not like it just because like your actions are not determined, right? It's not always consistent. Right. And that is going to be hard for some people, which is fair. Mm-hmm. It's going to be hard to be like, well, I wanted to do this thing and the dice said I couldn't do this thing. I'd argue that's how RPGs work. And of course, there's so many other kinds of things we could talk about with dice pools, but we're getting kind of low on time. But again, things that you want to think about if you're having a dice pool system is how often you are rolling dice. Like, are they big pools, small pools, any of these resolution systems we talked about? But you're also going to think about, how do you determine the size of the dice pool? All right, is it consistent? Is it static? Is it, going all over the place? You got to determine that. You got to determine, are you able to reroll? If so, how often can you reroll? Is it abilities that'll let you reroll? Because rerolling is much different than changing numbers, right? So, like, again, if we're saying a 6 on a D6 is a success, rerolling gives you different outcomes than if a 5 now becomes a success alongside a 6, right? These are the things you got to think about, but these are the things you can use to give really cool abilities for character customization or special perks and stuff like that when you're making these games.
Do you think using a dice pool would either overcomplicate our current game?
I mean, the way we set up our game, I like it where it's a fluctuating dice curve.
Right.
Where like the dice you roll is going to be different.
Same. I really enjoy
I
that
think that's
concept.
fun.
Yeah.
And we're kind of already like rolling at max 3 dice. I don't think you need to roll anything more than that.
Yeah, I agree.
I think if we add a dice pool, it would be for like a sub mechanic. I did have an idea for a game, and it was something we talked about in the most recent live stream, where the idea was for a Naruto-esque RPG.
Yes.
And the idea was, in order to do a specific jutsu, you have to, basically it's like Outgunned. You have to get a certain amount of matches, but each jutsu is like, this is how many of that kind you need to get. So for example, if you want to do a low grade fireball, which like Sasuke is able to do in like the 3rd episode of Naruto, it's like it might require 1 fire chakra and then 2 additional chakra, period. So that means you have to roll 3 dice and at least one of them needs to be fire. The other 2 could be whatever. Boom, you're good. And then depending on the more severity of the jutsus might determine like, okay, well now I need 2 fire and 1 water and then 2 additional blanks. So now I need to roll at least 5, but maybe I want to roll more so I can guarantee it goes off this turn rather than waiting till next turn. Stuff like that. It's something that I thought was cool. I haven't fleshed it out yet because we are doing too much design work as it is. That's something that is in the pipeline and maybe I'll make sometime in the future.
That was a lot of anime speak, and I understood some of it.
Basically, the idea is you want to cast a spell, but each die face is a different element, and then, yep, see?
I'm with you now. Because, again, I understand some things about Naruto, but, like, not a lot.
Yeah. So chakra is the magic system. So
got
like,
it. It all makes it
right.
Now it makes sense.
Mm-hmm. And
Sorry,
then
guys.
obviously you could have, like in character creation, like you choose you're from this clan. And so that means you always are guaranteed 1 fire symbol. So now that means I'm always guaranteed to do this thing. So now, in fact, instead of rolling 3 dice, I need to roll 2 dice. And it doesn't matter what I get because I always have the guaranteed fire symbol, right? That's the kind of idea is behind that, is those things.
But learning new attacks or new chakras?
No. Jutsus.
Sorry.
Spells.
So, learning... but you learn new things that are not within your clan, that are outside your clan, which would give you different abilities.
Yeah, and that's the basic idea. And then I have the idea of like, if you don't get it on the first turn, it's like, cool, you can re-roll that amount of dice again next turn. But now that means your entire turn is just spent doing hand signs, waiting for something to happen. And now it's like, oh, your friends are like, he's doing a big jutsu, we got to protect him, right? He's casting a spell.
If I walked up to a person and they were doing a bunch of hand signs in real life, I'm not sure how I would respond.
And obviously we're now off the rails. So thank you guys for watching. We appreciate it. Stay witty, everybody.
Stay witty and don't...
Okay, let me explain to you Naruto. Okay, so he was the 9-tailed beast inhabited his body, but it was not his choice. He was a baby at the time. And at this point...